So here are a variety of cogs, which are just quick mnemonics for me to mention the things we feel are important. Episodic memory. This is an episode in your life, hopefully one you'll reflect on fondly. So something you're actually doing, an event like this. But if I read you apple, penny, table and asked you to remember them, that's an event as well. That's an episode too. Much less exciting, but it does qualify. So memory for new information, episodes in your life. Working memory is your ability to solve problems. So if I very unkindly looked at somebody in the front row and said, take 7 away from 100 and keep going, I'm not going to ask you to do that. But if I did ask you to do that, that would be exercising your working memory, problem-solving space. And attention, just a fancy psychologist's name for concentration, in effect. So you're hopefully you're paying attention to me. You're certainly looking at me. You might be wondering what time the bar opens, but you are looking at me, and I'm going to assume that means that you're paying attention to me. And the phrase paying attention, I think, is very important. It is an effortful process, and it's one of the things that is, I think, very fragile in early neurodegenerative disorders. And there's executive function. So if you ever want to embarrass a psychologist publicly, you just ask them to give them an interpretation or an explanation of what executive function is. And we start to hop from foot to foot and we wave our hands, and then we give you a really long list of things. But what we really think about is your ability to deal with novelty, your ability to plan ahead, your ability to organize your thinking. These would be classic areas of executive function. And we have praxis and language. So praxis is your capacity to operate on your environment. I might ask you to salute. I might ask you to copy some figures, a whole host of means by which we measure praxis. And finally, language, your capacity to make yourself understood and to understand what's being said to you. Now, this is my list. There's differences of opinion, and there's always musical differences in cognition. But for me, this is where the action is in terms of wanting to measure cognition to see if we have efficacy. And if you look at what we think about in terms of forms of mild cognitive impairment, this variety of cognitive function is very much reflected in the subtypes of MCI that we talk about. So it's not unusual to see somebody present with primarily an executive functional deficit. Okay, so that's the context. All of these areas of cognition are at risk early in the disease process. And when we think about mild cognitive impairment, we make that very explicit. We provide for these subtypes.